to be here with you today and share some more information about the shamanic path and stepping into your powers as a healer. And I want to talk today about one of probably the most common questions I get from people who are exploring their healing abilities, who are beginning to understand their abilities and their life as an empath, and people that tend to just be sensitive in general. But before I go into that, I just want to remind you that I have a special offer for my Path of the Shamanic Healer live event. So stay with me to the end and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So one of the most common questions I get, and also one of the biggest places that I notice people hold some fear and that keeps them from moving forward, is the fear around taking on other people's feelings or being able to process energy without taking it on for ourselves. And this is, of course, a great question and a really potent place of learning for healers and empaths. And really where I'd like to begin is just noting that for those of us who tend to be able to tune into other people's energy very easily, we also are in the pathway of learning how to distinguish our own energy from other people's. So oftentimes, one of the first steps is that our energy actually kind of overlaps and merges, and beginning to pay attention to where our boundary ends and somebody else's boundary begins. And so our first step usually on this path is actually learning to have boundaries for ourselves in the external world, learning to say no when we don't want to do something, learning to ask for what we want, learning to speak up when we've had enough of something and we're ready to move on, right? But beyond that, if you're actually practicing energy healing with other people or shamanic healing with other people, this is a common place that many practitioners run into, where they'll have a session with somebody and the session might be great, but as a practitioner, you are just exhausted afterwards, or you kind of have some burnout, or maybe you even get sick after the session. Even if you're not actually working as an energy practitioner, you might also notice this when you go to large events with lots of people, or if you're in a place with low energy or low vibrations, right? And so then what tends to happen is we retreat and want to be alone. So one place that is really helpful here for learning to not take on other people's energy is actually to avoid the retreat to being alone. Of course, everybody needs to be alone once in a while. You don't have to give it up altogether. But what commonly happens is we get overwhelmed by other people's energy. And so then to avoid having that feeling, we go more and more inward and become more and more removed from groups of people. And then actually it makes it even worse the next time we go out, because it's such a shock to our system to be bombarded by all of everybody's energy. So of course, take care of your own needs and take care of yourself. And of course, I'm not saying never be alone. And if you're finding yourself retreating more and more and becoming more and more sensitive, then you can actually treat this by doing the opposite. So make a point to go out anyway, make a point to go in gatherings of other people anyway, but just take it little by little. So you don't need to go to a concert with thousands of people, right? Maybe start with, yoga class or something nearby where the energy feels right and it's not a ton of people, but you're not just removed and alone. And then you can gradually start going outwards from there and adding more and being around more people. And again, this will just sort of counteract the reactionary place we get into, and also teaches our nervous system that it's actually okay and that it's actually safe, right? So beyond that, so let's say you've done some of your inner work around noticing your boundaries and learning to be around people. And now you're in a spot where you're actually noticing that you are taking on other people's energy and what to do next. What do you do with it when you do realize you've been taking on other people's energy? So one of the easiest and most direct things to do is to imagine a grounding receptacle below you. So you can do this through visualization and meditation. You can do this through energy work. You can have a practitioner help you through this. There's lots of different ways to access this, and it's actually very, very simple. And what I like to do is imagine essentially, like a bucket of some kind or on the ground that lets down into the earth for the earth to recycle and take the energy where it belongs or where it needs to go. And so what I'll do is tune into my body, close my eyes, tune into my body, and just kind of do a full body scan and check for any places where it feels like there's energy that's not mine. Okay. And then I will just ask it to go down into the grounding receptacle. Right. So I kind of imagine it almost like just a stream of energy coming from my body down into the grounding receptacle. It also helps me to then fill in those gaps with my own energy so they're not vacant and able to just be filled with other people's energy again, right? Which leads me to another trick for removing people's energy is actually to do a scan of your body and fill it up with your own energy, getting really clear and feeling into yourself and who you are and what that vibration feels like, and letting your whole body fill up with you. And then naturally, that will just push out other people's energy. Okay. And I'd like to add a note here that it's important to have compassion when you're doing this. If we approach it with like a fear, like, somebody else's stuff is in me, I need to get it out so I can be safe, then we're actually just creating opportunity to call in more of other people's energy. We're teaching our body that we're not safe, which puts us into a state of fear, which actually weakens our system, which then makes it more susceptible for other people's energy to come in. So we want to have compassion. There's nothing wrong here. It's really common for this to happen, whether you're a healer or not. This is something that all people experience, right? And oftentimes, our heart is in the right place when we do this. And also it happens subconsciously all the time. So it's nobody's fault, not your fault. You're not unsafe because it's happening to you and other people aren't intentionally trying to attack you, right? So actually that leads me to a place that I've been playing with lately is for a lot of healers and sensitive people and empaths. We tend to be pretty watery in general with our energy. And so again, this is one of those places where it can get unclear where I end and where the other people begin. And this is where our boundaries kind of get muddied up and why we tend to have trouble with boundaries, why we have trouble discerning what it is that we actually want, and also how we tend to take on other people's feelings, right? And so actually what I've been playing with is if you imagine our energy being water, sometimes when I'm in situations where I suddenly feel like, ooh, I can't tell if this is my opinion or I'm taking on the opinion of someone else or the emotions of someone else, I actually just imagine myself becoming a snowflake suddenly, or turning into ice. And so it's just a little trick that I've been playing with. You might enjoy it or maybe not, but it's been a really quick check-in where I can move my energy from being watery to being sort of solid so that I can very quickly see, oh, okay, this is me and this is not me. So that's kind of a fun thing to play with. Let's see. So one more additional piece I'd like to add here is, so there are energy tricks to removing people's energy from our system. So we talked about the grounding receptacle. We talked about filling ourselves up with our own energy. Actually, another really simple trick for doing this is to, especially if you're actively working on transmuting other people's energy with permission, and you're working as a facilitator, you will probably be acting as a channel for the energies to move through your body. And so a simple trick is actually to just be very conscious that your channel is open all the way through your system, so it doesn't just come into your system and then stop. Right. So I imagine my open channel all the way down through my body and all the way down through my root, and then extending all the way down into the earth. And that way I'm not trapping other people's energy in my body unintentionally. Okay. But you also can use the mind to actively help yourself maintain boundaries and not get caught up in other people's feelings, and understand when you are getting caught up in other people's feelings. And that is because for those of us who are very sensitive and can pick up on other people's emotions, this is, it is a gift. It's something we can all cultivate and get better at. And if we are sensitive, we probably came into this world already pretty heightened in these abilities, right? The shadow side of it is unintentionally being caught up in other people's energy all the time. And also in that process, we tend to hyper focus on how other people are feeling or what other people should be doing instead of actually what we are feeling and what we should be doing. And this, again, is just the shadow side of it. And simply being aware that this is what happens can help flip that script. So the next spot here is also understanding that when we are feeling other people's energy or feeling emotions for other people on some level, that actually blocks them from being able to feel and process their own emotions. And again, it's not usually intentional. Our heart is in the right place. And here again, just being aware that this is what's happening, that actually when we are feeling something for somebody else, we're actually preventing them from their own healing. And so I use my mind to support myself through this process when I notice that I'm starting to move into somebody else's energy or starting to feel for someone else. I can just simply catch myself and say, oh, this is what's happening. And actually what is in highest service at this point is to withdraw myself from their feelings so that they can heal and deal with their own feelings, and then clean that up for myself. And again, sometimes even just being aware of that I'm doing it instantly stops it. And if it doesn't, then there are all of these other practices that you can go through to help move that energy through your system. Right. And even actually just consciously making a thought of giving it back to them can sometimes be enough. Yeah. And, on that note, this is something that, parents do a lot with their children, or if you're a caretaker of somebody in some way, this happens a lot. And oftentimes it, again, comes from the right place, or comes from the heart of, we want to handle things for other people and help them with it. And sometimes it even comes from a place of, because we know we are strong, we'll do it for other people. And because we know we can handle it or we can take it, right? And just remember that just because you can handle something doesn't mean that you should handle it. And just because you can take something doesn't mean that you should take it. So these are the most practical tips for you for learning how to keep other people's energy from getting stuck in your system, how to release other people's energy when it is stuck in your system, and how to be an empty vessel so that you can be a more powerful healer when you're working with your clients. And of course, if you are in that process of growing your healing abilities, if you're ready to step into the next level of your healing abilities, or if you've been on a shamanic journey for a while and are ready to move forward into some formal training and the next level of your training, I'm doing a live event on January 19th. It's called The Path of the Shamanic Healer, and it's a half-day event where we will be talking about the shamanic path, how to use your magic gifts, what your magic gifts even are. And I'm sharing the 4 core permission blocks that all healers face and how to move through those. And then, of course, we'll be doing a live shamanic journey together. So if you're interested in that event, you can learn more about that with my link in the bio, Path of the Shamanic Healer. And also the special offer is, if you are watching this video and you're interested in joining me, that's next week, please send me a direct message and let me know you watched the video on boundaries, and I'd be happy to share a half off coupon for you for that event. So thanks for joining me today. Let me know if you try out some of these practices and how they work for you. I'm more than happy to share some feedback, and I'd love to hear what your favorite method is. Thanks for joining me today. See you next week.